Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online School. We're back here on YouTube with our weekly quick tip. If you'd like to see more paddling technique in greater detail, remember that we have the K2NOnlineSchool.com with 200 videos that break down the ideas that we talk about in these YouTube videos into smaller segments with a lot more information. So if you're interested in that, having a coach, individualized plans, technique reviews, you name it, we have it right there on the website. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Today we want to talk about balancing out your stroke rate. Paddling overall is a pretty complicated series of movements. It's a very complicated series of ideas trying to balance the physics of how our body moves and how the boat can effectively move through the water. A lot of these concepts lead to answers that are not so simple. Does paddling faster make you go faster? These absolute statements, they don't answer the whole question that most people are really asking. And that question is, how can I be most successful in the race setting? So to answer that question, does your stroke rate climbing by itself lead to better success? The answer is no. So let's talk about it. One of the worst things that we can do in paddling is adhering to extremes. Everything we do in paddling is balancing these extreme concepts. So if you have a spectrum, typically we want to be somewhere closer to the middle, right? We can deviate a little bit side to side towards these extremes, but if you are on the poles of these extremes, you are not maximizing your paddling experience. So the spectrum we're going to talk about today is distance per stroke and stroke rate. The distance per stroke is how far you can make your boat move with the paddle stroke that you input into the water. The stroke rate is how many times per minute can you repeat your paddle stroke. These two ideas are on that spectrum because the higher your stroke rate, the lower your distance per stroke. And the less strokes per minute you take, the longer you let the boat glide and the higher your distance per stroke is. On paper, if we look at that, if we think we take more strokes and automatically move the boat faster, it gets a lot more complicated than that. The issue with extremes is diminishing returns. As the stroke rate begins to climb higher and higher, there is less time to perform technique and set up properly. There's more of a cardiovascular demand as well as a muscular one depending on the amount of pressure you're finding in the water. With diminishing returns, if you are only paddling 50 strokes, the higher your stroke rate, the better, because you can sustain it in a concentrated way. But if you have to take 10,000 strokes, climbing that stroke rate higher and higher is not sustainable for the long term. On the other side of the spectrum, if your stroke rate is not high enough, your boat, as you take the stroke, is going to accelerate, it is going to glide, and then is going to decelerate. As the boat slows, when you take your next stroke, you have to spend extra energy to get it moving, and you're losing out on your glide. So focusing on that distance per stroke, as we go through that, right, you have plenty of time to set up the whole body and make everything perfect. But as the boat glides and you take all that time to set up, the boat is going to accelerate and decelerate. When balancing out race performances, you never want your boat to slow down. A stroke rate too high doesn't give your body enough time to get into position to transfer energy. It doesn't give enough time for the boat to glide effectively. Stroke rate too low gives you plenty of time for all these things, but now the boat doesn't respond because it's decelerating. Balance is what we're looking for. Finding the balance in a sustainable speed of movement to set up and complete the stroke to allow the boat to glide effectively without decelerating, while balancing out your energy expenditure to be efficient for the long term or to match the distance that you are going. Again, if you're going 200 meters, you can just throw caution to the wind and try to climb your stroke rate as high as possible, because by the time it hits your nervous system, the event is over. You're paddling 5, 10, 15 miles, you must be a lot smarter with how you're managing this stroke rate. So luckily, we can look at high-level paddlers and see where they're at in optimizing their stroke rate to match specific distances. We can look at that information and try to emulate it for ourselves. This isn't something you have to go out and get meticulously correct. You have kind of a ballpark, and then you're going to fall somewhere within this range. With the Outrigger Canoe, this number is typically between 50 and 60. with a little bit of wiggle room in either direction. If you're very tall, have very long arms, that stroke rate might fall a little under 50, but your time in the water is much longer than somebody that is very short with short arms that might need to take more strokes per minute just because their fulcrum points are a lot shorter. So around 50 to around 60. Going much beyond 60, again, will become diminishing return. Most of the time, you can drop that stroke rate a little bit, let the boat do the work for you, try to find that extra glide. If your stroke rate is only 40, you can turn over a little sooner. You're letting the boat slow down because there's too much time between these strokes. With the Surfski, this range falls typically between 85 single strokes per minute and 95 single strokes per minute. There's some more wiggle room on this, plus or minus 5 on either end. If you have somebody very tall, they might only be 80 strokes per minute. With a long paddle, big blades, they can move the boat very effectively with that moderate stroke rate. Somebody being shorter and relying more on their cardiovascular fitness to keep the boat moving, you can see them sustain 100 strokes per minute for multiple hours. Again, getting to numbers like 110 and 120, these mirror more of sprint distances like the 1,000 meter or maybe the 5K. But anything beyond those points, right, you want to try and reel back that stroke rate and try to find an effective glide and give yourself the time to set up the strokes. Prioritizing your body's position and then your blade's position before taking the stroke is worth the time investment. But understanding that investing too much time into this can also be diminishing on the opposite extreme. If you have any questions about stroke rate, where your stroke rate is at, and how you want to improve it, you can feel free to email, message, comment, anything like that. I hope that general information has been useful. If there's other topics that you would like to see discussed, please comment or message anytime. Thank you guys so much for supporting this YouTube page. The videos getting up to 1,000 views in a week is awesome. Very excited for that. We're excited to keep producing content here on a weekly basis for everybody to enjoy. We'll see you guys next week with the next quick tip.